Well, hello, everybody. Let me show you what you missed today in Day 5 in Chapter 4. You missed a pretty tough day. We added in our fifth and last type of factoring. But I did answer questions that people had on that worksheet. And then we did do a skill check on there. So when you get to that part on the video, you might pause the video, take out a piece of paper, and try that skill check, and then bring it in to me and let me look at it. Because what that skill check is over, it's all those factorings that we've done so far all mixed up. So right now we're up to 4 kinds, 4 different types. After today we'll be up to 5. I would like to also quiz you next class over parabolas and some factoring. So we'll make sure you're prepared for that. Hopefully you have your class note sheet right in front of you. So hang with me. The first ones are going to be a little slow, so you're going to have to hang with me on those. Let me explain them to you, and then we'll go from there. But this is the skill check that I had the class do, a good skill check. What you have to do is go through each of these and decide which type is which, and then factor them and solve them. So like I said, you might write these down, do them, and then bring them in to me, and let me look them over. Like I said, we're not going to quiz today, but look at your class sheet. Here's something that you're going to have to be able to do first. So before I even start today's assignment, let me show you something that you're going to have to learn to do called factoring out a common binomial. You're going to see some items like this today. 2x times x plus 1 plus 3 times x plus 1. I need to show you how to factor out the common parenthesis. Notice that both of these terms have an x plus 1 in there. I'm going to factor out an x plus 1. If I take out this x plus 1 out of these two terms, I'm left with another parenthesis that has 2x plus 3. That's called factoring out a common binomial. Here's another one. You might see 5x, and we might see 2x minus 1, and then you might see minus 3 and a 2x minus 1. When you factor this out, it's going to look like this. There's going to be a 2x minus 1, and then a 5x minus 3. This part is just the parenthesis that they have in common. And then if I erase the parentheses for you, your other parenthesis just contains what's left over, which happens to be 5x minus 3. So here goes your first example. I'm going to go slow on this, and I'm going to list some steps for you. You'll want to write these steps down somewhere. But here goes. Where I got to show you today on how to factor is how we factor when there's a number in front of the x squared where the a is not 1, but it's not a perfect square. So here goes. Your step number 1. Let me come over here and list steps for you. Step number 1. You're going to multiply your a term times your c term. So in this case, I'm going to go 2 times 5 is 10. And we're going to write that number down. Your second step is I need you to find factors of 10 that add up to be b. Meaning this. 2 numbers that multiply to be 10 that I can make add up to be 7. Well, those happen to be a 2 and a 5. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this into 4 terms. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to write down 2x squared. It doesn't matter which one of these numbers you pick next, but I'm going to pick the 2. So I'm going to write this as 2x plus 5x plus 5. Look at what I've done for a second. I found 2 numbers that multiply to be 10 that add up to be 7, and they were 2 and 5. So what I did is I rewrote this middle term of 7x into a 2 and a 5. Here's the hardest part of the day. What I need you to do is ignore the second 2 terms for a second. Don't scribble yours out because I can erase mine. But look at 2x squared plus 2x. We're going to factor out whatever they have in common. And they have in common a 2x. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1x plus 2 divided by 2 is a 1. We're factoring out the ax squared plus bx that we learned that first day. Now, there's a plus sign right here, so I'm going to put a plus sign. Now, ignore these two terms. Look at 5x plus 5. They have a 5 in common, so I'm going to take out a 5. And then I'm left with 5 divided by 5 is 1x. Positive 5 divided by positive 5 is plus 1. Now we're to there. We rewrote it into 4 terms, and then we factored it. Now you're ready for the 5th step. Write it in the 2 parentheses. So notice that these 2 parentheses are the same. So I'm going to write one of those down, and then look at what's left if I totally erased the x plus 1's. I'm left with a 2x plus 5. Basically, remember, we're trying to undo FOIL here. Now I'm ready to go get my answers. Set that equal to 0 and get negative 1. Set that equal to 0, subtract 5 divided by 2. That's going to be our steps for the day. So I'm just going to click through these other examples, trying to make everything work good for you. So here goes your number 2. I've got 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. Here's my step number 1. I'm going to go 3 times 6 equal 18. I need you to go get me 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 18 that we can make add up to be 11. And in this case, my choices are 1 and 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. Well, the ones that I can make add up to be 11 are the 9 and the 2. So I'm going to rewrite this into 4 terms. So I've got 3x squared. You get to pick which number you put next. But since you're going to group them together to where they have something in common. So I'm going to put the 9 next to the 3, so I've got a 9x there. I'm going to put this 2x next to that 6. Like I said, it doesn't matter. You would get the same answer. And on this one, since it's a video, I will do it both ways. I will finish the way we started, and then I'll come back over here and show you what it would look like if you didn't do it that way, if you reverse their terms around. So here's what we got going next. Group the first 2 terms together. Totally ignore these 2 terms for a minute. Out of 3x squared plus 9, I need the biggest number that goes into 3 and 9. And that number is a 3. So I'm going to factor out a 3 and an x. 3x squared, so 3 divided by 3 leaves me an x, plus 9 divided by 3 leaves me a 3. Now it's time to pick on the next 2 terms. So see this plus sign right there? I'm going to put a plus sign. Now I got a 2x plus 6. The biggest number that goes into a 2 and a 6 happen to be a 2, which leaves me an x plus 3 equal 0. If you've done a good job, these 2 parentheses are the same. So I'm going to factor out an x plus 3, which leaves me a 3x plus 2. If you think about foiling, at some point there's 4 terms. That's why we have 4 terms here. Now let's go set this equal to 0. One answer is negative 3. The other answer is negative 2/3. Hey, if you would have wrote it as 2x plus 9x instead, let me show you what would happen. When I look at these 2 terms, 3x squared plus 2x, they don't have a number in common, but they have an x in common, which leaves me a 3x plus 2. And when I look at 9x plus 6, the biggest number that I can divide by 9 and divide into 6 is a 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, so I've got a 3x. 6 divided by 3 is a 2. Those parentheses are the same, so I got 3x plus 2 times x plus 3. My final two answers: subtract 2, divide by 3, subtract 3. So, moral of that story, guys, it doesn't matter which way you write it, but try to make your life easier there by writing them if they have something in common. At any time, you can stop this video, try one on your own, and then watch me do it. So here's number 3. My first step is 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6. I need two numbers that multiply to be negative 6 that I can make add up to be negative 5. Now, be careful with this. Something I know, one number's got to be positive, well, the other number's got to be negative. So, negative 2 and negative 3, not good. The reason being, two negatives multiplied together makes a positive. So the numbers I need in this case, I need negative 6 and positive 1. That's the two numbers I need to use. So now let me come over here and rewrite this. I've got 2x squared. It doesn't matter which number you write next. I'm going to write minus 6x plus 1x minus 3. I'm going to group these two together. The biggest number that goes into 2 and also a 6 is a 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2x. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and I need an x since there are 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Now, if you look at the 1x minus 3, they have nothing in common. So I'm going to take out a positive, because that's the sign I see, and a 1. And then leaves me a parenthesis, x minus 3. Notice that these two parentheses are the same. So I've got x minus 3 in one parenthesis. In the other parenthesis, 2x plus 1. My two answers: negative 3, negative 1 over 2. So, to me, the hardest part might be right here. In class, we struggled with this part, factoring out what they had. But I'm going to keep going through the video here for you. If you look at your number 4, on step number 1, I need to go 5 times negative 6. That's negative 30. As soon as you told me a negative, I need two different numbers. I need one positive and one negative. So once again, negative 3 and negative 10, not good. Because negative 3 times negative 10 is positive 30, and we need a negative. So there's some better numbers. In this case, negative 15 and positive 2. Negative 15 and positive 2. Now when I rewrite this, I've got 5x squared minus 15x plus 2x minus 6 equals 0. Like I said, you could flip-flop these around. It doesn't matter. I put the 15 and the 5 together because I know 5 goes into both of them. Now we're going to group these two together. And I'm going to factor out a 5 and an x. And then 5 divided by 5 is 1x. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. Now look at the 2x minus 6. The biggest number that goes into 2 and a 6 is a 2, so I've got plus 2, and then an x minus 3 equal 0. I've done a good job here because my parentheses are the same. So in one parenthesis is an x minus 3. In the other parenthesis is a 5x plus 2. And then I'm taking for granted, since we spent 3 or 4 days on solving equations, that we can just look at these and solve them. So one answer, positive 3, The other answer, negative 2/5. So there's the steps. I'm going to click through a couple more with you. In class, I stopped right here, and I had the class try number 5. So if you wanted to hit pause and try number 5 before I move on, you sure could. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on keeping on. So here's what it's going to look like. 6 times 3 is 18. I need to find two numbers that multiply to be 18 that I can make add up to be 11. Well, in this case, it's 2 and 9. So now we rewrite it. So I've got 6x squared. It doesn't matter how you write it. Plus 9x plus 2x plus 3 equal 0. Group these two together. The biggest number that goes into 6 and 9 is a 3. So I'm going to factor out a 3 and an x. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2, so I've got a 2x plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. If you look at the 2x plus 3, though, there's nothing in common. So I'm going to take out a positive, because that's the sign I see right there, 1, which leaves me a 2x plus 3. The parentheses are the same. So I've got 2x plus 3. The other parenthesis is a 3x plus 1. Set them each equal to 0. So I've got negative 3 halves and negative 1/3. And then we got it. I've got 3 more to show you. Number 6 is important because I need to make sure you can kind of deal with a negative number. So here goes my number 6. First step, 6 times positive 1 is positive 6. I need you to go find me two numbers that multiply to be positive 6, but add up to be negative 5. So you might think positive 6 and negative 1, but those multiply out to be negative 6, so that's not good. So I need to use a negative 2 and a negative 3, because negative times a negative is a positive, and when I add them up, it comes out to be negative 5. So I'm going to rewrite this as 6x squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 1. Group your first two numbers together. Out of those two, I'm going to take out a 2x. And then to fill it in, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so I've got 3x. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. Now be careful on this next piece. There's a negative sign right there. This is the first time we've seen a negative sign. So I'm going to take out a negative 1, because they have nothing in common. Negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3x. Positive 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. My parentheses are the same. So I've got a 3x minus 1 in one parenthesis, a 2x minus 1 in the other parenthesis. Set them each equal to 0. On this one, I'm going to add 1, divide by 3. On this one, I'm going to add 1, divide by 2. So that's kind of the lesson, guys. I've got 2 more to go over with you if you're still a little confused on it. I'm not going to worry about number 9 and 10. Number 10 doesn't factor anyway. So here's my number 7. Step number 1, 8 times 9 is 72. I need two numbers that multiply to be 72 that add up to be 18. So this might take a couple of you a little bit of time. But 72 divided by 2 is 36. I know that there's a 4 and an 18. There's also a 3, but that's not going to help me. But there's a 6 and a 12. There's the ones I can make add up to be positive 18. Let me rewrite this then. So I've got 8x squared doesn't matter which number, plus 6x plus 12x plus 9 equal 0. Let me get rid of my numbers here now. Group the first two together. I need the biggest number that goes into a 6 and an 8, and that happens to be 2. So I've got 2x, which leaves me a 4x plus 3. Because 8 divided by 2 is 4, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Here's a plus sign, so I'm putting a plus sign. The biggest number that goes into 12 and 9 is a 3, which leaves a 4x plus 3. I must have done a good job because those are the same. So 4x plus 3, 2x plus 3. Set them each equal to 0. If I do that, one answer is going to be negative 3/4. The other answer is going to be negative 3/2. So I've got one more coming your way, and then hopefully that'll be enough to get you rolling on your assignment. So look at your number 8. I've got 10x squared minus 13x minus 3. My first step, I'm going to go 10 times negative 3 is negative 30. I need two numbers that multiply to be negative 30 that we can make add up to be negative 13. This is one of those be careful again. I could try to use a negative 10 and a negative 3, but when I multiply those, I get positive 30. So there's better numbers. I'm going to use a negative 15 and a positive 2. Now when I rewrite this, I've got 10x squared. I'm going to go ahead and go plus 2x minus 15x minus 3. Normally I would put the 10 and the 15 together, but in this case I wanted another negative there for you. We'll group these two together. We'll take out whatever they have in common. Happens to be a 2 and an x. 10 divided by 2 is a 5, so I got 5x plus 1. Now be careful here. We're going to factor out a negative something. So the biggest number that goes into 15 and 3 happens to be a 3. And then negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5x. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is a positive 1. My parentheses match up, so I've got 5x plus 1 in one parenthesis. In the other parenthesis, I've got 2x minus 3. Set them each equal to 0. Subtract 1, divide by 5. Second parenthesis, add 3, divide by 2. And that's the lesson for the day. Hopefully that's enough to get you started on your homework. The first 14 are exactly what I did right here. And then 15 through 20, I mixed them up. You have to decide what kind it is. Factor them and set them equal to 0. So good luck.